Ma'am, step back from the door. Step back now.
Why are you on my property? I live here.
We got a call. I need identification now.
I'm Judge Patricia Morrison,
You're making
Federal
a very
District
serious
Court,
mistake.
County.
I don't care who you say you are. Hands where I can see them.
Who do you say you are? Hands
The
where I can
hands are
see them.
visible.
Wait.
The doorbell camera captured everything. Every word. Every movement. Every violation. And Officer Marcus Chin had absolutely no idea that the woman he was about to arrest on her own front porch had spent the last 16 years on the federal bench, presiding over dozens of cases involving police misconduct, Fourth Amendment violations, and civil rights abuses. The woman standing at her own front door wasn't panicking. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't begging. She was Judge Patricia Morrison, and she had ruled against unlawful arrests more times than she could count. She had written legal opinions that became precedent in 4 states. She had sent corrupt officers to prison. And now, she was about to become the plaintiff in a federal lawsuit that would cost the city $775,000, destroy multiple careers, and expose a pattern of racial profiling that had been ignored for years. Before we dive deeper into this absolutely shocking story, I need you to do something. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. Your country, your state, wherever you are. And if you believe in holding authority figures accountable when they abuse their power, hit that subscribe button. Patricia Morrison wasn't expecting trouble that Thursday evening. At 54 years old, she had just finished a grueling day at the federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon. She stopped at the grocery store on her way home, picking up essentials for the week. 2 bags of groceries, a routine errand, nothing unusual. When she pulled into her driveway at 6:30 p.m., the sun was still bright. Her house sat on a quiet tree-lined street in an upscale neighborhood where she'd lived for 8 years. Her neighbors knew her. The mail carrier knew her. She belonged there. But as Patricia balanced her grocery bags and searched for her keys, she noticed a police cruiser slowing down in front of her house. Then it stopped. Officer Marcus Chun stepped out, his hand immediately resting near his service weapon. Patricia's legal instincts kicked in. She recognized the posture of suspicion. She set her bags down on the porch and turned to face him, keeping her hands visible. Years of presiding over police misconduct cases had taught her exactly how these encounters could spiral out of control. Chen's first words weren't a greeting. He demanded she step away from the property immediately. "Officer, can I help you?" Patricia asked calmly. Chen's response made her blood run cold. "I need you to step away from the property. We received a report of a suspicious person in this area." "This is my home," Patricia said. "I live here. I was just bringing in groceries." Chun looked skeptical. "Do you have identification proving you live here?" Patricia felt the familiar anger of being profiled, but controlled it. "Officer, I don't need to prove I live in my own home. What reasonable suspicion do you have that I'm engaged in criminal activity?" Most people Chun stopped didn't challenge him with legal terminology. Patricia's question put him on the defensive. "Ma'am, I'm investigating a suspicious person report. I need to verify your identity and your right to be on this property." Patricia recognized the playbook. Vague justification, burden shifting, constitutional overreach. "Officer Chun, I'm going to tell you this carefully. My name is Patricia Morrison. I am a United States federal judge for the District of Oregon. This is my home. My credentials are in my purse. What you're doing right now is an unreasonable seizure under the Fourth Amendment." Chin barely reacted. He'd heard people claim important titles before. "Ma'am, I still need to see identification." Patricia moved slowly and deliberately. She pulled out her wallet and removed her driver's license. The address matched perfectly. Behind it was her federal court identification card, complete with her photograph, the seal of the federal judiciary, and her official title. She handed both to Chun. Chun examined them carefully. For a moment, uncertainty crossed his face. Then he said something that would end his career. This could be fake. Across the street, Helen Rodriguez, Patricia's neighbor of 8 years, stepped onto her porch. When she realized what was happening, she shouted, "Patricia, is everything okay? Do you know this woman?" Chin asked. "She's a federal judge." Helen called back. "She's lived here for years. What are you doing?" Chun should have apologized right then. Any reasonable officer would have. But he'd committed to the stop, questioned her repeatedly, challenged her identity. Backing down in front of a witness would look like weakness. Ma'am, I'm going to need to verify this information. Have a seat on the porch. Patricia's eyes went cold. Officer Chun, every second of this is being recorded by my doorbell camera. You have my federal credentials, and you're about to destroy your career. Chun and Davis conferred by the patrol car while Patricia waited on her porch. Helen was now recording on her phone. Other neighbors had noticed and stepped outside. Davis approached Patricia. Ma'am, we just need to verify your credentials. Call the federal courthouse, Patricia said. The number is public. They can confirm my identity in 30 seconds. Instead of making the call, Chun made the worst decision of his life. Ma'am, turn around and place your hands behind your back. You're under arrest. You're arresting me? For what crime? Interfering with a police investigation and obstruction. There is no investigation, Patricia said sharply. There's an officer who saw a black woman in an upscale neighborhood and made assumptions. But if you're going to arrest me, do it. The camera is recording everything. As Chun pulled out handcuffs, Patricia spoke clearly to her doorbell camera. Officer Marcus Chun, badge number 2847, is arresting me at my own home for being black in my own neighborhood. The handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Helen and two other neighbors were recording now. Every angle was being captured. Chen's stomach dropped. Yes, he replied quietly. There was a pause. Then a supervisor's voice came through. Chun, this is Lieutenant Patterson. Do not move. I'm en route now. You arrested a federal judge? At her residence? Chun tried to explain, but his words came out jumbled. Patterson's response was sharp. Do not transport. Do not process. Stay exactly where you are. That's a direct order. Chun sat in the driver's seat, not moving, not looking back at Patricia in the back seat. Davis approached the window. This is bad. Isn't it? Chun didn't answer. He knew his career was over. The 14-minute wait felt like hours. Neighbors had gathered, about 15 people with phones out. Lieutenant Patterson arrived looking furious. He opened the back door. Judge Morrison, I'm Lieutenant Patterson. I apologize profusely. You're being released immediately. What was I being charged with? Patricia asked. That's being withdrawn. I want everything in writing. The incident report, body camera footage, doorbell footage, Chen's statement, the suspicious person call audio. Everything. You'll have it all by midnight tonight, Patterson promised. Deputy Marshal Williams was visibly angry. Judge Morrison, are you all right? I'm fine, Marshal. But I won't be filing a simple complaint. This is going federal. Williams nodded. I'll be filing a report with the Justice Department tonight. Chun and Davis stood nearby, both looking pale. Williams turned to them. You two have any idea what you've done? Don't answer. You're going to need lawyers. Patricia got into her Uber and headed home. When she arrived, the grocery bags were still on the porch. The ice cream had melted, but there was something else. A note slipped under her door from Helen. I recorded everything. I also have footage from my security camera showing Chun circling the block 3 times before he stopped. Call me. Friday morning, Patricia reviewed all the footage. Her doorbell camera had captured everything perfectly. But Helen's security camera footage was the revelation. It showed Chen's patrol car driving past Patricia's house 3 separate times over 10 minutes. He'd been watching, waiting, looking for an excuse. This wasn't a response to a call. This was targeted. Saturday morning, Patricia called civil rights attorney Michael Chun, who'd practiced before her court for years. She explained what happened. Michael listened in silence. When she finished, he said something shocking. Judge Morrison, you're not Chen's first. I'm currently representing 2 other women he stopped in upscale neighborhoods. Both black, both professionals. Both questioned why they were there. Patricia felt her anger crystallize into determination. This was a pattern. How far along are your cases? Still in discovery. The department's fighting us on releasing Chen's stop data. Well, they can't fight a federal judge, Patricia said. I'm filing my own lawsuit. and I want you to represent me. They spent the weekend building the case. Michael brought his files on the other two women. The patterns were identical. By Sunday evening, they had a 31-page federal complaint ready. It was detailed, devastating, with time-stamped video citations. It named Chun, Davis, and the city of Portland for failure to train and supervise. Monday morning, the lawsuit was filed. Within hours, media outlets were covering it. By evening, every major news outlet in Portland had the story. By Tuesday morning, it had gone national. Federal judge arrested at her own home was the headline everywhere. The doorbell footage was released as a public court exhibit. Within 24 hours, it had 8 million views. Comments sections exploded. Legal experts broke down every violation on news shows. Civil rights organizations called for immediate firing and reforms. The Portland Police Department issued a generic statement about conducting a thorough investigation. The public wasn't buying it. Protesters gathered outside headquarters. The police union initially defended Chun with a statement about difficult decisions in complex situations. The backlash was immediate. Even other officers said this was indefensible. By Wednesday afternoon, the union quietly deleted their statement. Chun was on his own. The internal affairs investigation began immediately. Captain Rebecca Stone was assigned. She had 22 years on the force and a reputation for thoroughness. Stone requested all of Chen's files going back 5 years. Every stop, arrest, complaint, and evaluation. What she found was damning. Over 5 years, Chun had made 347 traffic stops. 223 involved black drivers. That was 64% in a city where black residents were 6% of the population. The numbers didn't lie. Stone dug into the searches. Chun had searched 89 black motorists and only 12 white motorists. The hit rate was revealing. For black drivers, 7 out of 89 searches found contraband. That's 8%. For white drivers, 5 out of 12 found contraband. That's 42%. Chun was searching black drivers far more often but finding evidence far less often. Classic racial profiling. Stone called Wallace into her office and confronted him with the statistics. You saw these numbers 8 months ago. Why didn't you flag this? Wallace shifted uncomfortably. The sample sizes seemed too small. I thought it might be patrol patterns. Stone's voice was sharp. He's stopping black drivers at 10 times their population rate. That's not patrol patterns. That's racial profiling. Stone interviewed the 3 women who'd filed complaints about Chun. Their stories were identical. Stopped in upscale neighborhoods. Questioned about belonging there. Treated with suspicion despite doing nothing wrong. One woman, Dr. Denise Franklin, was an ER doctor. Chun stopped her outside the hospital where she worked and demanded to search her vehicle. She'd filed a complaint. Wallace reviewed it and dismissed it as a misunderstanding. Another woman, attorney Jennifer Williams, was stopped in her own neighborhood. Chun questioned whether she lived there and detained her for 20 minutes. She filed a complaint, also dismissed by Wallace. Stone expanded her investigation to include Wallace. She found a pattern of protecting officers with problematic records. Wallace was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The police chief called an emergency press conference. He announced that both Chun and Wallace were suspended without pay. He promised comprehensive reforms and accountability. But the damage was done. The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division announced they were opening a pattern and practice investigation into the entire Portland Police Department. This wasn't just about one bad officer anymore. This was about systemic failure. Federal investigators arrived and requested 5 years of stop data, use of force reports, complaint files, and training records. What they found was worse than anyone expected. The disparities weren't limited to Chun. 47 officers showed similar patterns of disproportionate stops and searches of people of color. The early warning system that should have flagged these patterns didn't exist. Complaint procedures were inadequate. Supervision was lax. Training on constitutional policing was minimal. Settlement negotiations between Patricia's attorney and the city began 3 months after filing. The city's position was weak. Michael had video evidence of every violation. He had expert witnesses lined up. He had a plaintiff who was a federal judge with unimpeachable credibility. The initial offer was $250,000. Michael rejected it as insulting. The second offer was $450,000. Still not enough. Patricia wasn't motivated by money. She wanted systemic change. The negotiations continued. Patricia instructed Michael to demand not just financial compensation but a consent decree requiring federal oversight, mandatory bias training, civilian oversight with real authority, and an early warning system to identify problematic officers. The city balked at federal oversight. That would cost millions and last years. But they had no leverage. The evidence was overwhelming. Public pressure was intense. The trial would be a disaster. Davis's confession was the final nail in Chen's coffin. Proved premeditation. Chen hadn't responded to a suspicious person's call and made a mistake. He'd gone hunting for someone to profile. The city's attorneys knew they had to settle immediately. The final settlement was announced 6 months after the incident. $775,000 to Patricia Morrison. Mandatory reforms including federal oversight for 3 years, creation of an early warning system, civilian oversight board with investigative authority, implicit bias training for all officers, and quarterly public reporting of stop data by race. Patricia donated $500,000 of the settlement to civil rights organizations working on police reform. "I don't need the money," she told reporters. "I need the system to change. I need people who don't have my resources protected from what happened to me." The police chief held a press conference announcing the settlement and reforms. He admitted the department had failed and vowed to do better. Chen's termination was effective immediately. The letter cited racial profiling, unlawful detention, unlawful arrest, violation of department policy, and conduct unbecoming an officer. Chen tried to appeal through his union, but his attorney reviewed the evidence and told him the truth. The video is too clear. The victim is too credible. The pattern is too obvious. You're not winning this. Chen withdrew his appeal. At 29 years old, his law enforcement career was over. He would never work as a police officer again anywhere in the country. But criminal charges were still possible. The local prosecutor's office reviewed the case for potential charges: false arrest, deprivation of rights under color of law, civil rights violations. Each carried potential prison time. Wallace faced similar prospects. He'd spent 19 years building a career, and now faced termination and possible prosecution for systematically covering up misconduct. The union couldn't protect either of them. They'd violated too many policies, ignored too many warnings, and caused too much damage. Wallace's corruption ran deeper than anyone knew. He'd been using his position to direct aggressive policing toward neighborhoods where he wanted to keep property values high and certain demographics out. He'd protected officers like Chen because they were doing his bidding, whether they knew it or not. Federal prosecutors decided to file charges. Wallace was indicted on 6 counts, including deprivation of rights, conspiracy, and honest services fraud. He faced up to 15 years in federal prison. Chen was charged with 3 counts of deprivation of rights under color of law. He faced up to 5 years. Both men hired expensive attorneys with money they didn't have. But the evidence was overwhelming. The trials were scheduled for the following year. Meanwhile, the Portland Police Department began implementing reforms under federal oversight. An independent monitor was appointed to review all policies and practices. New training programs on constitutional policing and implicit bias were mandatory. The early warning system began flagging officers with problematic patterns. The monitor's report shocked the city. For years, officers had been promoted based partly on how many stops and arrests they made. Nobody had analyzed whether those stops were constitutional or the arrests were valid. Officers learned quickly that high numbers meant promotions, regardless of how they achieved them. This explained why supervisors like Wallace had ignored complaints and disparities. They'd been rewarded for the same behavior when they were patrol officers. The entire culture needed to change. The monitor recommended scrapping the current promotion system and rebuilding it from scratch. Promotions should be based on community trust, constitutional compliance, and problem-solving, not raw numbers. The police chief agreed to implement every recommendation. He had no choice. The consent decree gave the monitor authority to mandate changes. 6 months after the incident, Chun and Wallace both took plea deals. Chun pled guilty to 2 counts of deprivation of rights and received 18 months in federal prison plus 3 years supervised release. He was permanently banned from law enforcement. Wallace received 2 years in federal prison plus 5 years supervised release. He lost his pension. His reputation was destroyed. His rental properties had to be sold to pay legal fees. Everything he'd built over 19 years was gone. Patricia watched the sentencing hearings from the gallery. She felt no satisfaction in seeing these men imprisoned, but she felt relief that accountability had finally come. The real victory wasn't the settlement or the criminal convictions. It was the systemic change. The reforms being implemented would protect thousands of people who would never know they'd been spared an encounter like Patricia's. 1 year after the incident, the Portland Police Department released its first annual report under the consent decree. Stop disparities had decreased by 34%. Complaint processing had improved dramatically. Officer training had been overhauled. The early warning system had flagged 15 officers for intervention before their behavior escalated to fireable offenses. The changes were working slowly but surely. Patricia returned to her regular duties on the federal bench. She continued presiding over cases, including several involving police misconduct. Colleagues said the experience made her even more attuned to civil rights issues. But she also showed remarkable grace in an unexpected way. When Chun was released from federal prison after serving 14 months, he struggled to find work. No law enforcement agency would hire him. Most employers rejected him once they learned about his conviction. He was working minimum wage at a warehouse when he received an unexpected letter. It was from Patricia Morrison. The letter wasn't cruel or gloating. It was an invitation. Patricia had partnered with several civil rights organizations to create a police reform training program. They needed someone who could speak honestly about how officers develop bias patterns and the consequences of unchecked prejudice. She was offering Chun a chance to participate in the program. Not as an instructor, but as a cautionary example willing to speak truthfully about his mistakes. 2 years after the incident, Patricia was invited to speak at a national conference on police reform. She told her story, but she also told Chen's story. Not to excuse what he did, but to illustrate how systemic problems create individual bad actors. She spoke about the importance of accountability, but also about the possibility of redemption when people genuinely change. I didn't want to destroy Marcus Chun, Patricia said. I wanted to stop him from destroying others. The system that trained him poorly, supervised him inadequately, and rewarded his worst instincts, that system needed to be destroyed. And it was. The conference attendees gave her a standing ovation. Police chiefs, civil rights attorneys, community activists, all standing together, recognizing that real change required both firm accountability and genuine reform. The doorbell camera footage that started everything had been viewed over 50 million times. It was shown in police academies, law schools, and community meetings across the country. 1 2-hour detention on a front porch became a catalyst for change in departments nationwide. Patricia still lived in the same house on the same quiet street. She still carried groceries from her car to her front door. But now, when patrol cars passed by, the officers waved respectfully. They knew who she was. More importantly, they knew what she represented. Accountability, justice, and the possibility that even broken systems can be reformed when good people refuse to accept injustice. Thanks for watching this story all the way through. If this opened your eyes to the reality of racial profiling and the importance of police accountability, share it with someone who needs to see it. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. We're committed to bringing you stories that matter, stories that expose injustice and show that change is possible. Drop a comment and let us know. What was the most powerful moment in this story for you? Do you think the reforms went far enough? Have you or someone you know experienced similar treatment? Your voice matters in this conversation. See you in the next one.